Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking.
What do the environmentalists have to say about this one?
I thought she was smart to explain her policy positions as not a change in values, not a change in her deep inner mooring in the way that she views things should change, but instead something almost situational in terms of taking in more information. I will also say, as I put on my gender and politics hat for a brief moment.
When she talked about her niece, she's looking at Dana Bash. She's smiling. She looks relaxed. But when you ask her about her policies and the flip-flopping, she's looking down. She's looking small.
You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history.
Because you cooed it.
The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and in an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy.
Nothing.
I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard.
What?
Which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes.
$6,000 car seat?
There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda, too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things
unburdened by what has been
proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by a third. We did it in Minnesota. To have a federal partner in this, unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
You talked about, you call it
nothing,
the opportunity
non-answer, said nothing.
Economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability.
Thanks to you.
One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID.
Yeah, and your party was demanding lockdowns and shutting everything down.
In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging. What we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream. Do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Why haven't you done anything?
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for
which was
seniors.
Trump's plan.
Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited, I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars.
Then you guys undid that. Then you redid it. You're like, look what we did.
She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000. When we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking.
What do the environmentalists have to say about this one? Wow, that's pretty curious because she definitely said she wanted to ban fracking. She's on video saying it. And now she's reversing course on this. I wonder, anyone have any eyes on Greta Thunberg? What's happening? Is she okay with this?
As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward.
Well, why did you change from 2019 then to 2020? And what happened in that 1 year? Was it a political shift, or did you learn about fracking, or did you want to try to win Pennsylvania or something like that?
Kept my word, and I will keep my word.
As vice president, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
Northern part of Central America.
The northern part of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region. Immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported.
It was garbage.
Which I support. And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border. And because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill, a border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill.
Because you gave them fat raises in there to bribe them to get on board with it.
And 1,500 more agents would help them. That bill would have allowed us to increase seizures of fentanyl. Ask any community in America that has been devastated by fentanyl what passing that bill would have done to address their concern and a pain that they've experienced.
So you would push that legislation again. I just want to ask
about... Not only push it, I will make sure that it comes to my desk and I would sign it.
Just one other question about something that you said in 2019 when you first ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone in mind?
Would. No one in particular in mind. I got it.
Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger.
Election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month.
She looked a little nervous there.
He suggested that you happened to turn Black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity. Any?
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself.
Okay.
And that's not a change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival.
Okay, this is
Women
interesting.
were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And
How many?
we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime-
And we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at
Okay, this is interesting.
the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution where Israel is secure and in equal measure the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
I want to ask you a question about how you've described your
And Walz's collar is also off too, right? These are optics. The optics matter. And you have to, get your shoulders puffed up a little bit and, be imposing, fill up the frame. They do a lot of this stuff. They should be intentional about it.
for service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just, one other question, because again, this is all new. This was not however many days ago. This was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And so I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students. I've been out there. And I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights. The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The vice president's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it if you've been through that. I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child.
Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have
Wow, that's crazy because you guys cooed him out of there like 10 days later.
served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly.
That's your record, so
he
why are you
cares
running
so
away from
deeply
it?
about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I
Smart to
have
us, too.
spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has
Like in Afghanistan.
the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that.
Whoa.
And so, one, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really
You guys
was.
have been in
The
charge.
last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your
Yeah,
administration.
thank
I'm
you.
talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped, I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up.
This is the dumbest
That's
thing
what's
I've
at
ever
stake
heard.
as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
When he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes and, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle.
Wow.
And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And
What a story.
And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, are you sure? And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you.
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right.
My first thought was about him, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
I think history is going to show a
What?
number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we
It
have
was. You guys have wrecked the
accomplished
country,
around
wrecked the world.
Finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies,
What?
new industries.
What's new?
What we have done to bring our allies back together.
What
and have
allies?
confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance.
What?
What
Who's
we have
joined?
done to stand true to our principles.
What principles? Free
Including
speech?
one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity.
What are you talking about? Ukraine?
And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary
rambling off.
successes, but the character of the man is one that he
Nothing.
has been
Said
in
nothing.
his life and career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
I just have to
Cut.
ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention. You mentioned one of them.
What?
Governor. A moment that you shared, the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him. So incredibly proud of you, so emotional.
Do you love your
saying,
son,
That's
Tim?
my dad.
Tell us how much you love him.
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
Wow.
Grateful
Great
for so many
interview.
reasons
Great
to be on
question,
this ticket,
Dana.
But that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And you try and protect your kids.
Great question.
It brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment. I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is talking about the era we're in is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that I hope people felt that out there, and I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question.
Is he dying
Madam
or something?
Vice President, the photograph that
What?
has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking
Yes.
about was watching you accept the nomination.
Oh my
You didn't
gosh, it's like a
explicitly
love
talk about
fest.
gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that
Hey, this is weird.
viral.
I wonder if Dana would ever ask JD Vance about his relationship with his kids, or Donald Trump about Eric Trump being there, or whatever. No, never. Okay. This is just total garbage.
picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
Listen, I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this
Yeah,
moment.
gosh.
For all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids. Then I'm in the front of the photograph.
Yeah, we can see it's on the screen,
And
yeah.
it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
Did she talk to you about it afterwards?
Oh, she had a lot to talk about. She had a lot. She listened to everything, and she listens to everything.
Give you your hot takes?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So that's just amazing. That is from CNN. We know that if you do the calculation on this thing, that Team Trump did it for us. They said Kamala spoke for just over 16 minutes and didn't even address the crime crisis that's happening all over the country that they're covering up. She spent a mere 3 minutes and 25 25 seconds talking about the economy, 2 minutes, 36 seconds talking about immigration, okay? So 16 minutes out of whatever that was about, I think about 26 minutes total, would have been the total interview right around that time. So 16 minutes, she's had 30 plus days to prepare for this. She came out, and if we had to grade her on that, I mean, it wasn't like an F. You know, she didn't gap herself into oblivion. She talked in a lot of platitudes and said mostly nothing, but it's average, I would say. She did average. I mean, give it a C, probably. It wasn't an A. We didn't learn anything new from her about her charismatic persona that we'd all been missing, or some oratory capabilities that she suddenly discovered. No, it's Kamala. We always kind of thought this was going to be a rough go for her. Now, there was a lot of reaction to this. In fact, even the New York Times and some of their opinion people were saying this was rough. One opinion piece from the Times said a vague, vacuous TV interview didn't help Kamala Harris, didn't work out so well for her. Said she didn't hurt herself in her interview this week with CNN's Dana Bash, but she didn't help herself either. On the positive side, she came across as warm, relatable. To recall Obama's famous exchange that Hillary Clinton was more than likable enough. Harris refused to be baited into identity politics. I don't think so. I think she definitely talked about that. She was running for president regardless of race and gender, but that's bringing it up. It's like, I represent all people of all races and all genders, right? It's like, yes, I'm not a white person, you know, I'm a black female, according to her. And she had a nice line of attack against Trump, observing the distinction between leaders who measure their strength according to whom you beat down, which was a dumb line. I thought it was a high school line. But the one line that I did like from her that I thought is totally dishonest, but is a good line, is her former prosecutor line. And we know that the left doesn't care about this at all, right? They were defund the police in 2020. Then they elected Joe Biden, who created the modern police crime state that we live in. So the contradiction there is just unbearable, but they'll do it again this time, right? So if they'll elect the prosecutor just because now Trump apparently is the criminal or something. But that line was dumb. Now, less positive, says this guy. She was vague to the point of vacuous, right? That's what we were saying. And that line in particular, the beat down and lift you up stuff, that's like at the end of high school football movie. She struggled to give straight answers to her shifting positions on fracking and borders other than to say my values have not changed. Well, okay, fine, but you evaded the question of why it took you guys more than 3 years to get control of the border, and you now have done that through an executive order. It also didn't answer the question of why she reversed her former policy positions. She relied on a few talking points that may not serve her well in the next 2 months. She mentioned price gouging, but Americans probably won't believe the grocery chains with razor-thin profit margins are actually the real culprits. Her $100 billion plan to give first-time home buyers $25,000 in down payment support would mainly be an incentive to even higher home prices. Even Trump is smart enough to explain how this is a gimmick. Now, a bigger weakness was the presence of Governor Tim Walz there. It made her look small, like physically and emotionally. Though he delivered a fine speech at the DNC, he was transparently evasive in answering about his military service and his DUI and his family's fertility. Yeah, we didn't even mention the DUI. If there are other lies or untruths, campaign better get ahead of them. Now, as for Bash, she is intelligent and insistent. She's not afraid to ask follow-up questions, but there was way too much fluff in this interview to lay to rest doubts about Harris's readiness for higher office. Tougher questions next time, please. Yeah, it was pretty patty cakey, and we saw that at the very end there in spades. And here's what CNN themselves said about this on fracking.
The fact check bottom line, Abby, is that she did not actually make clear at a 2020 debate that she had changed her previous support for a fracking ban. So let me take you through this kind of saga. So here's what she said at a CNN climate town hall in 2019 on the subject of a fracking ban.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
That was quite clear. So she ended her 2020 presidential run in December 2019. The only debate she participated in 2020 was the general election debate with then Vice President Mike Pence. And I went over the transcript of that debate tonight. Nowhere in there does she make clear that she had abandoned her previous support for a fracking ban. Rather, she repeated that Joe Biden, the head of the Democratic ticket at the time, would himself not ban fracking. So listen to what she actually said in that 2020 debate.
Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking.
So it makes perfect sense that at the time she was speaking on behalf of Biden, the president, not the vice president, sets administration policy.
That's not what she said.
But maybe other people feel differently. I certainly did not hear anywhere in there Kamala Harris saying that she personally had abandoned her previously expressed 2019 view. Rather, again, she was speaking for Joe Biden.
Yep, and that is Kamala and her campaign people trying to come up with some sort of justification. We need a a talking point. We need something that you can latch onto when this comes up to say that, no, you were always consistent here and you're not just a gigantic flip-flopper. But even CNN called her out on that. Well done. Now, here is what someone else said. This is from Alex Thompson, says that he was on CNN doing some analysis. Here is his take. Let's listen.
I can tell you that there was, among Biden aides, Harris aides, Democrats across town, like the main attitude was because essentially some of her worst moments as vice president have been in these interviews, that she can get a little bit on her back foot, that she can get nervous and have these sort of viral word salad clips. Now, I don't think everyone was saying this was like an A+, but they basically got through it. And I can tell you that
got through it. Yeah, about a C. I think a C is about right. They made their way through it. It was a gimme interview. I mean, it was pathetic from Dana Bash, the kind of questions that she was lobbing out there. She had a couple follow-ups, to be fair. She asked to dial in on it a little bit on some of the questions, but it was a pretty easy interview. And Kamala spoke for 16 minutes. So what can you do in that time to really screw yourself up? It's kind of hard to do that if you're a professional, if you've been doing this for a long time, as she has. So she didn't fall down a flight of stairs, but she didn't come out here and blow everybody's socks off either. Here's what Frank Luntz says. He says, I realize a lot of people think that Kamala Harris has done well so far in this interview. I disagree. Says a good debater will find it easy to challenge her. And as we even noticed, she felt a little uncomfortable or awkward. She had a lot of those introductory phrases like, first of all, and well, let me be clear, right? It's giving her brain time to think, and she's got some work to do before the election starts, no doubt about it. Here was another exchange from Johnny Maga. There was, looks like a poll, a conversation with these individuals who had listened to this. And here's what this woman on MSNBC had to say.
You feel some kinship towards her as a mixed person?
Not personally. I find a lot of her trajectory to not be my brand of woman leader. We've got 3 major international crises going on and someone applying to be commander in chief. As a woman, I want to see you do more than, appeal to giggling and having a girl moment on the stage.
Yeah, that sounds right. We got serious stuff going on. And there's that infamous image of her coming out after Afghanistan when we lost 13 service members, where she's laughing, cackling, maybe even drunk, telling the media to shut up for a second. And the DNC was a lot of that. And I thought that that was not a real interesting look for them, because a lot of Americans are hurting. And we hear it all the time. And you see it, actually. You see it a lot, too. And it's a sad state of affairs for many people. Now, to have the Democrats bouncing around on the DNC stage with their pom-poms and their Twinkies shoved in their faces, let them eat cake. We're joyous, while Kamala has been responsible for a lot of the smoldering, and Tim Walz literally smoldering businesses around their localities. It doesn't match, okay? It's kind of offensive. It's in your face. Now, here is what Morning Joe had to say about this on MSNBC. This was Vitali. She's a correspondent over from them. Let's see what the other side's saying about this.
How do you see what you heard yesterday? And what some of the criticism has been from Republicans, which is, well, of course, she's coming around to these positions now as a presidential candidate because she knows the people she needs to win where she says she sits now. What do you make of her evolution? How should voters look at it?
First of all, on policy, it makes sense that she spent so much of that interview focused on the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration, whether it was capping the costs of insulin, whether it was taking down overall prescription costs for seniors. Those are cornerstones of what they viewed as their first 2 years in office and their legacy going forward. It makes sense that that was a lot of the focus. I thought she was smart to explain her policy positions as not a change in values, not a change in her deep inner mooring in the way that she views things should change, but instead something almost situational in terms of taking in more information. I will also say, as I put on my gender in politics hat for a brief moment, it was a smart way to go about it, because attacks on flip-flopping and not being honest about your positions are in some ways more lethal to female candidates, because it is seen as in some ways being more duplicitous, more like they're lying. We saw it be very effective against someone like Hillary Clinton, in addition to Trump calling her crooked. That's Harris, I think, even though she doesn't talk about the gender role of this, it's her employing some of the studies and the data and the knowledge around how do you tackle the fact that her policy positions have in some ways changed and evolved, and how do you explain them in a way that's not going to feed into the most negative characterization that voters and people who are running against her could possibly give it. That definitely struck me as one. But look, someone who's covered her her over the course of really the breadth that she's been on the national stage, this is a different person. And I'm sure that Sam and the rest of the folks on the panel who have covered her agree.
No, it isn't.
She has a different kind of confidence. She is leaning into bipartisanship in a very Biden-esque way, in a way that really makes you wonder if that might not be the key thing that might have rubbed off on her over her time as the number 2 in the Biden-Harris administration. I think that's the thing that she's going to try to use and leverage continuously, in addition to the fact that she's been the administration's strongest messenger on another key issue that is in the minds of voters, which is reproductive access and abortion care. And that's something that she's been leading on. That's kind of a softball for her at this point. The rest of the harder policy stuff, of course, there should be more questions on. I'm interested in hearing more on. But in terms of this, I think the explanation tracks with where I think they're happy with it.
I'll just say very quickly to Allie's point, I went back and watched the sort of infamous Harris interview with Lester Holt after this one. And what was remarkable was just how much more confident she was, how much more steady she was last night.
Okay. Well, she had her comfort governor there with her, and she was with her BFF, Dana Bash. She didn't have that when she was with Lester Holt previously. So you can see MSNBC's thrilled about it. Kamala did great. Her 16 minutes were just really encouraging, and they feel enthused with who she is and how she's going to lead America through the next epoch. But here is Byron Donalds. He says, this is terrible. All right. When she talked about her niece, she was smiling and relaxed. But when she talked about her policies, she's gulping, she's pursing her lips, getting all nervous, looking around. She's trying to remember what they told her to say. Here's Byron.
Forget all of things that she said. People, go back and watch her body language. When she talked about her niece, she's looking at Dana Bash. She's smiling. She looks relaxed. But when you ask her about her policies and the flip-flopping, she's looking down. She's looking small. She doesn't look like she has confidence in what she's saying. Leave it. She's trying to remember what they coached her to say. That is not the leadership our country needs in this pressing hour. We need Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, Byron Donald's in the house. He's right about that. Kamala would be a disaster. And Jason Miller, also on the Trump team, was out talking about this. And you can see Kamala here also. And you just watch her body language as we're going through this. And you can see looking down to the left, kind of an evasive thing. You got an interviewer right there. Just, look up, talk to them, answer the question, just talk to them, just explain who you are. You should have this stuff dialed in pretty well. You've been in this your whole life, essentially. So here's Jason Miller.
President Trump was right. It did not look presidential. There's a certain threshold that you have to meet when you're looking presidential. Can you lead this country? Other candidates in the past have had it. I don't see that with Kamala Harris. Even Joe Biden, when they put him in, say, like a still photo environment, he would look presidential. May have disagreed with the way that he proceeded in his record. But Kamala looked as though she'd been called in by her teacher and the principal to say, Kamala, you have not been to class 1.5 years. It's time to talk about your record. And on that record, she had no good answers. What we saw, though, there's a big difference between scripted teleprompter Kamala that we saw at the convention. That was only a week ago, by the way. And then actually being in an environment where you don't have notes, you have to actually answer on the fly with what you're being pressed on. Right. And the answers were so vague. My values haven't changed, get 3 mentions, and say crime, for example, gets 0 mentions.
Yeah, she can talk in the platitudes, but even when she's got a script, sometimes it doesn't work out all that well for her. This is what happened yesterday when she was talking about the Constitution, I think. Here's Kamala.
He even called for termination of the United States, the supreme land of our nation, the United States Constitution.
That on the teleprompter? I don't know what happened there, but don't think that's right. Anyways, here is now what they're doing. Apparently, they're also busing people to her rallies. So I think the facade is starting to crumble off.
At all. But catch this. It's been since 1992 since a presidential candidate came to Savannah, which was Bill Clinton in the hostess city. Now, at the N-Market Arena itself, lines stretched around the venue, as I was just telling you, and people started getting here as early this morning for the vice president. But for those a little further away from the hostess city, shuttles to the rally contained a lot of excitement.
I was in Atlanta and I heard that the vice president was going to be in Savannah, so I decided to just kind of beeline over here and check it out.
It's interesting, right? So they're busing them. And I don't know who's paying for these buses or what's going on, but they're shipping people from Atlanta out into some other areas, right? Probably trying to show that Kamala has some nice enthusiasm outside of the major metro areas. We'll see about that.